Hi, my name is Leighton Jin. I'm the Director of Development for the American Documentary and Animation Film Festival. And we have a really great, remarkable film that is going to be showing at AmDocs this year. It's tomorrow. We're double dipping today. We got the director, Martina Radwan, and we got one of the producers, or the producer, uh, Ruchi Mital, right? Okay. I'm a print guy, so sometimes pronunciations kind of mess me up. Can you guys both tell me about the story and how you came about deciding to do tomorrow as a documentary?
Well, I'm a cinematographer, and I have traveled the world as a cinematographer. So in 2008, I was shooting a segment about the child homelessness in Mongolia, which was quite the numbers were quite large. Um, and on the shoot, I met a boy, a 16-year-old teenager, and I kind of was grappling with the fact that he made time for us. He showed us around. He showed us his home, his life, and then at the end of the day, he was carted off by the police to be brought to a temporary childcare center, the only one that existed in Ulaanbaatar at the time. And we went to have a nice dinner at a restaurant. And I really was at a point in my career where I kind of that was difficult for me. And so I asked around, like, who could help him and what could be done, and nobody really had an answer. And then I just decided that I would try to help him, because he had told us what he wanted and what he needed, and it was like, that should be possible. So that's how it started.
Now, Ruchi, when you heard about this idea, what sold you on doing this, and what do you think made it appealing for you to get involved?
Sure. So I'll pick up a little bit where Martina left off, because from that moment to where we are today, there's well over a decade in between. And that Martina was both living this life of sort of building an unexpected family with this young man, Baska, and then two other young people in Mongolia, Nasa and Benny. And she, in the telling of their story, realized that she had to put herself in the story if it was going to be an honest portrayal of their story. And so she's a cinematographer, but she took it upon herself to also put herself in the story and filmed their story over the course of the next, I think, 8 years or so, and then began working on this film. So I entered this film about 3 years ago when the shooting had been completed, but Martina was still working on shaping this film. And as you can imagine, over all those years, there was a lot of material. And Martina had a very difficult job of doing a personal voiceover. And so I was sort of brought into the project first just to sort of try and help Martina with this personal voiceover, because it's very difficult when it's about you yourself. How do you have this distance and perspective, and are we talking to the kids or the audience? So there were all these interesting and rich questions to figure out. And then Martina and I just really clicked. I completely admired her bravery to put herself in this film, and to be so honest. I admired the kids so much, their bravery and their willingness to be open. I thought this idea of how you create a family that looks very different from what we usually call a family was so important for people to see. So I just wanted to be further involved in the project at that point. And so that's sort of when I came in, and the things that brought me to this journey.
Martina, how difficult was it for you to do a documentary and then be part of the documentary as well? You're like for other projects, the actress and the director. How difficult was it for you? Because I'm a journalist. I was a former journalist, and I have no problems asking questions, but having questions asked me and being the subject is kind of makes me not. It's not my wheelhouse. So, what was it like for you to be the part of this story?
Well, I mean, it took a moment. That was, my original plan was to make a film about them and their situation. And then I realized that first of all, my involvement changed their lives and changed their situations, and how would I explain that? You know, like, but it was also, I was struggling with the fact of like asking them to be on camera and participate in a film, knowing that they didn't really fully understand what that means, because none of us does unless you're, you know, working in film. And so I just felt like if I asked them to be on the film, then I should at least deliver the same. So it was like, it was story driven, because I couldn't tell the story without my involvement or without knowing who my character is, but it was also morally driven.
And then, Ruchi, can you talk about your involvement in terms of, I think when people are telling stories, there's certain things they don't want out there. But like when I was a reporter, you're like, no, no, this tells a story in a very unique way that's very important. Can you talk about your role? Because from what you're telling me, that's kind of what you had to do, is kind of go through the material. And did you have to convince Martina for something maybe she wasn't comfortable with or uneasy with?
Um, I'm not in the business of convincing.
Okay,
And
okay.
I definitely didn't have to do that in this case because, but you're right that I think that my job was to ask a lot of questions. And I did ask Martina a lot of questions about herself, about her motivations, about the kids. I think that this film works so well and why I'm so proud of it is because Martina was so transparent, not just with the kids, not just with me, but with herself. And she's able to ask herself the hard questions and like question her own motivations. Was I doing the right thing? And I think that's just something we could use in the world more, that people question themselves. So I don't think I met resistance there, but I do think sometimes maybe Martina was harder on herself than I would have been. Or I think that maybe there are certain things that it's just hard to see when it's your own story. So, for example, when I would watch footage, I would see a connection between something Martina mentioned from her own life and then something that I saw happening with the kids. And once I mentioned it, she's like, oh, yeah, that is there. But she may not have seen it in the same way because I had an outsider's perspective. So I think that was a big part of the job of just asking questions and pointing out the things that I saw and saying, what about this? And just helping her to maybe have a little bit more, allowing herself to be more emotional in the voiceover, I suppose.
Well, I mean, I think that is very valuable because sometimes when you're telling your own story, you can't be impartial to it. So sometimes
Mhm.
those things get muddled.
I mean, Ruchi's participation was incredible valuable because she had exactly that. She had the outsider view, but she also had the insider view on my end, so she could really, you know, connect the dots. And I was way too involved.
Is there any advice you could give some of the other filmmakers on how to do a documentary when they find themselves being part of the story as well as trying to tell a story? Any kind of advice you could give them?
I mean, I think you should be very, it should be very clear why you're in the story, because sometimes it seems like an easy way out, to answer certain questions that are hard to answer in the film. But I think if you want to, you know, if you want to make a personal documentary, then you just have to understand why and what's the core at the film. And, I mean, as I said, I never set out to make a personal documentary. It's just like, and I think that happens to a lot of filmmakers, right? You think you're making a film about XYZ, and then you realize, oh, one of the reasons why you're making a film about XYZ is because you're so deeply personally involved. I mean, every film is personal to a certain degree.
And I think a lot of the documentaries and a lot of the filmmakers we've talked to, that's been a kind of theme. They go in with one idea of their documentary, in the process, it becomes something completely different, which sounds like the case with you. If I understood right, did AmDocs help you with financing the film with the film fund? Is that correct?
So AmDocs had, to be honest, I don't know if they still have it, but AmDocs had a pitch contest.
Hmm.
And so they had, I think like 10 films were pitching, and 3 or 5, I can't remember, it's a while ago, won a grant. and
Mhm.
and we were one of the grand winners.
And then can you talk a little bit about that process? And I think we do still have that competition.
Well, it's really interesting because you get to pitch on stage in front of a full house of moviegoers who know nothing about the film and who are not necessarily in the industry. But then you of course also have a committee that decides between the films, and it was great because it was one of the earlier times that we had to pitch in front of people and see get an instant reaction. I mean, we showed a trailer and had a verbal pitch.
Were you part of that as well, Ruchi?
No, that predated me.
Predated
Yes,
you. Okay.
it's a while ago.
um, and then what kind of feedback have you guys gotten from the film already? Has it shown already, or is this the premiere?
Yeah, we had our premiere back in November at Doc NYC. We had 2 sold out screenings here. New York is both of our hometowns, so that was really meaningful. But what was the most meaningful is that the kids, who we call the kids but are now young adults,
Actually, they're
they were,
adults. They're not even young adults
yeah,
anymore.
they're full on adults. 2 of them, Benny and Pasca, were able to travel from Mongolia for the screenings, along with another character, Selenge, who's sort of a translator and friend of the family. So they were present for the screening, and they got a standing ovation, which they really deserved, and which was really a beautiful moment. And got to see themselves in the film and hear people's reactions, and the reactions were great. I mean, people really engaged with the film. I feel like everybody saw something different. If you were a parent, you saw one thing. If you were a sibling, you saw something else. If you have ever been adopted, you saw something else, So I think it spoke to people on so many different levels. We got such great feedback. And it was just amazing to have the kids there with us for that.
Yeah.
What did the kids say to you, Martina? Well, to both of you after the screening. What was their feedback?
Well, it was interesting because I mean, obviously they had seen the film before and they had seen various stages because they had video rights. Um, and so the first time I think they watched it and with the nervous anticipation of like being on screen, being exposed, right? Your life is there to be watched and also to be judged. I mean, that's how you feel, right? And then the second time, it felt like they actually saw a film, so they could step back a little bit, and they really enjoyed it. And they were very verbal and on both Q&As, but the second time felt like they really wanted to say something,
Oh,
and that was really beautiful. And to me, it was. I mean, it took me a very long time to make the film, and at the end, it took us, you know, together a little bit longer. Although I do believe that a film tells you when it's done, and I think it was the perfect timing. But the thing that got me through, especially through all these years where I was a little bit more on my own, was really the imagining how the kids could see how the world would react to them. And so
mhm.
it was really gorgeous because when Ruchi and I got on stage at the beginning, we got a standing ovation. But then when the kids came on stage, people literally jumped out of their seats. Like, it was so beautiful to see. Like,
Yeah, yeah.
and
Are they
as
making it
Ruchi,
out to Palm Springs?
no, unfortunately not. It's quite
Oh,
a journey from Mongolia.
yeah, it is. This is I don't know if this is true, but it seemed like that for you, this is a project where you had to step out of a comfort zone for you, at least, Martina. Maybe for you, Richie. I mean, because it's a very unique process, and when every time you step out, there's a growth that happens. Can you talk about how the growth that you guys felt by doing this project and maybe how it's changed you or enriched what you do?
Well, I think that really big, I mean, yes, it is a personal film, but it is foremost a film. And I
Hmm.
think we really you know, that was really our goal, to make it a cinematic film and a film experience for the audience where everybody can draw something out of it, but it's primarily a film. That's one thing. And then the other thing is, I think we're both very proud of that we haven't watered it down.
Mhm.
That we kept the stories, because it's complicated, it's layered, it's like not sometimes that's just not obvious. Like people go one way and then they make a turn and go in another way, and we tend to kind of simplify things uh to make it more understandable. And it was really beautiful to see that the audience totally went with it, totally got it. There was no questions, and that really makes me very proud that we stuck to our principles, and like we're making a good cinematic film and we're keeping it complicated.
Yeah. Yeah. Letting it be nuanced, letting lots of things be true at the same time, which, the prevailing wisdom would say, oh, people they don't have the attention span for that, or they need to make it simple. It's just not the case. People
Right.
like being dropped into a complex situation because that's more accurate to our actual lived experience,
Right. And
Well, I mean,
complex is a better word than complicated.
well, I like projects that are complicated and challenge me as a viewer or when I was a reporter. So I think people will love this because, too often we get things simplified, and when they simplify it, it just becomes, I don't know, just regurgitated stuff. So I really do admire what you guys have done. This seems like I mean, it just takes a lot of courage to kind of put yourself out there, which I'm not really necessarily comfortable doing.
Well, but
Um,
it's not so much. I mean, of course, I'm putting myself out there, but the thing is, there are two aspects to it, right? I'm putting my actions out there to be judged, and I'm very
mhm,
open with that because, again, that's part of the film. I grappled with my actions. Like, were these the right decisions? I don't know. Um, yeah, and then there's of course the personal aspect. Like, my life is now an open book, and it's very funny. And I told the kids, well, not kids anymore, I told them the same thing, that like people will come to you and they will think they know you, and you just have to run with it, like, because they're so in awe of what they have just seen. They think you're like their best friend, right? And that happened a lot.
Yeah, yeah. I think the other thing that this film really highlighted is that we don't really hear the voices of kids that often, like to speak in their own voice, to say what they actually want. And that's one of the things that's at the center of this film, is the agency that kids have, and like what it means to really listen and not just kind of project what we think they should want or what we think they should do. Um, and so putting kids' voices like that in the center, what you can really learn from it. And one of the most beautiful moments from that Q&A was when somebody asked Bhaska, is there anything else you want to say about this film or your experience? And he just simply said it better than anybody else could say it, was children are important.
I
What
don't,
can
I don't
we
know if we
say
can.
after that?
I don't know if there's anything we should say after that. That's just a
Right.
perfect. That's
Yeah.
just such a perfect ending. Well, thank you very much for taking the time to speak with me about your film. We're looking forward to seeing it here at AmDocs. Have you guys, either of you, been to Palm Springs before?
Well, I went in 2016 or 2017
Oh
for the
yeah.
pitch. Yeah. No,
Yeah.
I'm looking very much forward to come back. I really do. So it's a wonderful festival, and I'm very happy that we're swinging there.
And Ruchi, have you been here before?
I have. It's a beautiful place. And what an amazing place for a film festival. And I feel like there's just a strong arts community there. So it
Mhm.
feels like a really great place for this film and for a festival.
Yeah.
Well, I think a lot of them are going to be excited to watch your film, as will I. I haven't had a chance to see it, but I'm pretty excited for this one. So, thank you for thank you for taking the time to speak with me today. And is there anything I might have missed? Anything you want to add before we get off?
I can't think of anything.
No, me either. We're excited to be included in this year's festival.
Yeah.
And we're excited to have both of you. So, reminder: the American Documentary Animation American Documentary Animation and Film Festival is March 21st to 25th in Palm Springs at the Cultural Center. Get your tickets quick. Sean Penn's the opening night guest, and we're going to have a lot of amazing films, including tomorrow. Thank you both for joining me, and we'll see you in Palm Springs.
Thank you.
Thank you.